So, you want to be a BS artist. Well, good thing, because that's what we're talking about here. Assuming you mean behavioral science artist. Because we're talking about the fine art of using behavioral science tools to motivate action for the planet. And in this episode, we are talking about gamification. Let's get into it. It's a big one, y'all. We're going to start with this first definition of gamification, which comes from a gentleman, Sebastian Deterding, who really wrote some of the first papers about gamification and its use in motivating action and behavior. Gamification, this is the definition, gamification is the use of game design elements in non-game contexts. Seems super straightforward, maybe kind of easy, and maybe that has been some of the problem with this. Right, so a lot of people have been operating with this definition in mind, which is we just take some game-like elements, pick one. It could be leaderboards, it could be badges, it could be point systems, it could be lives, it could be jumping over things, it could be the underground lair in Mario Brothers, whatever it is. Let's just slap that onto whatever we're doing, and it's going to work. There's been some pushback on this, really more recently in the last few years, as I've been researching gamification. And this quote comes from Preeti Kodamarthi from the Decision Lab. And also the paper they wrote on this, which I include in the booklet, is really helpful for kind of wrapping your head around gamification. So this quote is, when we describe gamification as adding game-like elements, we are automatically boxing ourselves into a process where we identify what these game-like elements are and then force them to fit any non-game context. They probably don't do it that aggressively, but that's what I'm thinking of. And so this has been some of the issues, is that we're just taking some game-like elements out of context and applying them to our program without really thinking about the bigger, more holistic picture of what is gamification and have we designed this process or this program with the underpinnings of gamification in mind, because honestly, it's not as simple as badges, leaderboards, point systems. It is a much bigger, more complex world. And so we have to go into it knowing that we are undertaking a gamification process intentionally and not just slapping it on. What they've seen is that when we just simply use some game-like elements, we risk either it not working. That would be the most benign case scenario. Worser case scenarios are we really introduce kind of warped incentives for why someone is going through a behavior change process. We can demotivate more than motivate, or we can, what's one of the other ones? I have another one here. Oh, annoy the audience, so they hate us. So we want to avoid all of that by really coming at it from the beginning with a really intentional mindset of using gamification and not just game-like elements. So let's get into a little bit more of what this means and determine if gamification is good for your project. So likely you have a software or an app or a program that you want people to use consistently. So think about like iNaturalist or BirdNet. This is something where we gain data from people using it, and ideally they're using it frequently and consistently and accurately. So how do we keep people motivated to come back into this program and this app over and over again? Alternatively, you might have educational activities. These could even be offline, like you want people to do scavenger hunts, and it would really benefit from them being much more fun and engaging than what they are. So they're already some form of a gamification, but maybe kind of a boring version of it. Your program, ideally, if it fits one of the above, also needs some extra motivation to maintain the audience doing repetitive process. So they got to do this one thing, like fill in a logbook from their fish catch of the day over and over and over again, maybe forever. So how do we keep it fun and engaging and interesting? Possibly you are in an engagement process with your audience. You're trying to get them involved, get them interested, and you find that you're losing their interest or they're getting bored somewhere along the way. You can think about, is gamification something we want to build into this to keep our audience engaged? So if you say yes to all of this, this is our program, it's a good fit, we have this repetitive process or educational activities, we want to keep the audience engaged, then the next big question is, are you prepared, you, your team, your organization, to design a gamified program from the ground up as a comprehensive, user-centered, audience-first process. And I know that sounds heavy, but this is what gamification increasingly calls of us. It is not something simple or light to use. It's not a simple fix to our problems of engagement. It is a user-centered, audience-first, comprehensive process. If you're ready for that, then let's press the start button, boop, 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 and we can get going. So why does it work? At the core level, gamification works because gaming, game-like elements are fun. That's why people play games. Gaming as an industry has been booming over the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, it crosses every demographic category that we have. It is just growing so rapidly, which is why gamification has also become more popular. People are more comfortable with game-like elements and are even starting to expect it a little bit more since gaming is such a big part of their world. But fun is just, the basic of it. There's so many reasons why gamification does a great job of including and exciting and engaging our audiences. And it can be all these things from like, it's a sense of adventure, there's sort of a story or narrative that goes along, intrinsic motivation, a sense of curiosity. I get to discover what's behind this door. I'm going to go seek it out. There could be this competence and mastery of I'm getting better at fighting the orcs. It's always orcs, and I really hate orcs a lot. There could be surprises like Easter eggs around the corner that you didn't know, and that kind of taps into that intrinsic motivation and maybe a tangible reward. We like this active challenges. What can I overcome? It becomes a little bit of a hero story at the end. So there's so many factors, and this is not an exhaustive list of why people enjoy engaging in games and why something like gamification does such a great job of engaging our audience. So one of the challenges is that most games or even gamified processes use more than one of these. Typically, I think on average, they said they use about 5 in any particular game or gamified setting, which makes it really hard for researchers to totally pinpoint which ones are doing the best job or the hardest work at getting audiences engaged and keeping them engaged. It's hard to kind of like separate out these things and know, it's curiosity and not story or narrative. Really, the beauty of it and why we call it a comprehensive process is it's about the multitude and bringing many of these different elements together to design that sort of really engaging, fun journey that the audience is going to go through. So if you want to get started, so you've passed all these levels, right? You said, I understand what it is, why it works. I think it's a good fit for our project. Now you've reached this level of getting started. So this is the longer list than any of the other BS Artist series that I have. 5 things you should be prepared to have ready to design and implement a gamified process or gamification. So first, we have this with feedback loops too. Have a clear end goal for what the audience should achieve through this gamified program. What's the ultimate, win at that final level 10 that they get there? What are they trying to achieve? Ideally, you have an audience segment that's already interested in achieving this goal, right? They're already excited to, find the princess at the end, or, more behavioral change approach, reduce their carbon footprint at the end. If you don't have that already, then start with a plan to cultivate that audience and then bring them into the gamified process. It's really helpful to, even before you start designing and implementing, have a sense of how you want the gamified experience to look and feel. From the audience perspective, what is it? What's the experience? There's so many different types of games out there that you can, pick from the variety that's already in front of you and say, I kind of want it to be more like World of Warcraft. I have no idea what that looks like. Versus Legend of Zelda. I know what that one looks like. Versus, I have it on the tip of my tongue. I want to say Adventure Time. That's a cartoon. Other games that you can think of. Obviously, I'm not a huge gamer, so I don't have a wealth of knowledge to choose from. But do your homework and think about what kind of feel you want to go for. And then the next one kind of harkens back to what I said before is, if you're going to embark on this journey of creating a gamified process, make sure everybody's on board, right? There is a team commitment to say, this is why we're going into this. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a lot of hard work. It's going to be a lot of trial and error, but we are committed, go team, to doing gamification. Lastly, and not everything has it, but I think this is a helpful one, is have a non-gamified option for achieving the same end goal. Not everyone in your audience wants to like reduce their carbon footprint through an effing game, right? So maybe they're like, okay, well, here's the checklist for you. You can just walk yourself through it. So don't necessarily force people to have a game. Maybe give them an opt-out if they want to achieve that goal on their own terms, or maybe through a more analog method. So if you're ready to get started, here's how to implement gamification. So on the previous slide, I said you need to know what the end goal is for the audience. But now we need to reframe it from the audience's perspective, something that they want to achieve at the end of this game. So Reduce Your Juice does that. They do it in a really fun way. This was a whole program that got people to reduce their energy usage at home in order to save money. So your electricity bill goes down, you'll save money. And that was the whole focus here, even though maybe on the back end, we're like, yay, we're saving the planet and we're using less energy and we're going green, yay. For the audience, the goal of the game was to save money. And we can be okay with that, and that can really help motivate the audience as they get through the different stages to say, oh, I'm saving more bucks. Let me go to level 2 and save even more bucks. So clarify for the gamer, for the end user, what their end goal is. Then create the challenges. And I got this from a gentleman. His website's really awesome. It talks a lot about gamification. His name is Zach Fitzwalker. Let me double check that in my notes over here. I don't want to get his name wrong. Zach Fitzwalter. And his website is Zach Fitzwalter. Again, in the booklet, I have the links for this and all the details if you want to check it out. He's really helpful. I referenced his work a few times in today's presentation. But some of these formulas he creates I thought were really, really fascinating and really helpful. So challenges comes from having that clear goal and then setting some rules, right? Like it's interesting to think about. Games are interesting and challenging because there's certain things that we can do and certain things that we can't do. Even some things that we can't do yet because we haven't leveled up or accumulated the right number of points or defeated the demon or whatever, however it goes. Like having those parameters, those guardrails in place that say, okay, you can achieve this goal, but you got to kind of stick within this lane, makes it more challenging and more interesting for the user. So again, this comes from the Reduce Your Juice campaign. You see they have actually 3 different games in sequence. This one is cool game, so kind of turning off, I think, some of your electricity use. The power raid switching. So this is, I think, an HVAC with fans, switch game with electricity, and wash. So dishwasher and washer dryer, the wash game. So it goes in sequence. And they have a clear journey of where this audience is going to save money and reduce their energy usage. And then each one has different challenges, different rules of what they do to get to the next level. Really fascinating stuff. You'll see here too that they have cool reward received. We'll get to that in a second. So think about what the challenges are. It's not just someone, traversing the landscape in a beautiful scenery and then boom, they're at level 2. They have to overcome something and achieve that next level. This is just like so oversimplified here, and yet I think this is really the hardest part about gamification. You have the challenges, you have the end goal. Now you have to design the entire experience. And ideally, this experience is appealing to your audience, aligned with the behavior change goal, rooted in motivational psychology, includes multiple game-like elements, not just one, and be engaging as fuck. So done, right? Box checked. This is probably where you're going to spend most of your time figuring out what is this gamification process experience like? What do we want it to include? And this is, again, a paper I linked to in the booklet that I definitely recommend looking at, written by Rapp. I think the first name is Amos, and it dissected games to figure out what are some of the different elements that really keep people interested and excited. And they do recommend using more than one. But these are things like past and future selves. Okay, maybe there's sort of a journey. The character's history through its equipment characters' attributes to be improved, right? So that's like the self-improvement journey. Rewards, self-organization, cooperation and friendship. Maybe you have to gain friends as you go through this process. Maybe it's just a journey itself. And it gives some examples of it and how in supporting literature if you want to go down that rabbit hole. It is a rabbit hole, so I want to let you know that before you start to go down it. So think about what is all the things included in this experience. How do we want to design it? There's no hard and fast rules. There's no hard and fast formulas. That's going to be the most frustrating part about doing this is you have to try some things and see what works. We're going to come back to feedback loops. If you haven't watched that video, I do recommend checking it out. We dive into what feedback loops are, why they work, and how to design them. But here is where they live within the gamification process. So interesting challenges, which we just covered, plus feedback equals meaningful experiences. This one also comes from Zach Fitzwalker. Thank you so much, Zach. So this is really interesting part of the journey where we're saying, okay, now you have to level up. You got some feedback. This is what you need to do better next time. This is how you get to that next chapter. This can include so many different types of tactics you want to throw in at this point. Points, leaderboards, badges, new quests and new levels unlocked, tangible rewards. And you saw that in the Reduce Your Juice. Like, oh, I got a fan. I got an actual fan to use at my home because I unlocked that level. You can have new skills and accessories for avatars. And I know there's some games that are really big on that, like a new skin for your avatar or some new fighting equipment. Again, I'm not a gamer, so please be kind. Bonus lives or time increments. So maybe your challenge is like you have to complete some steps within, 50 seconds. And now, you leveled up and you get a minute and a half or something to do it. So you can get creative with some of these feedback loops and some of the rewards for keeping your audience going. And the last two here, think about the future, right? Don't assume that your players are only going to play this for a half an hour and they're done. What if they really get into it? What does the future look like for that game? How do you keep it interesting? How do you help the audience progress? What comes next? And maybe you'll have to design that as it's already launched. That's sort of how these things happen, that sort of agile learning and developing process. But don't assume that it's all said and done. Think about the lifespan of the game. And since there are no perfect right answers or formulas for this, it's going to be a process of test, and test again. See if it's moving the audience forward. See where they're getting stuck, similar to what we talked about with feedback loops. See if there's kind of barriers that are holding people back. Maybe one of the levels is too hard. Oh gosh, we have to figure out how to make it easier so people can actually get to the next level, which is where we want them to go. And some caveats here, watch out, beware of the venomous fly trap. I think I got that right. So a few things to be mindful of when designing gamified processes is that when it comes to rewards, so we love giving out rewards in games. You get points, you get something tangible, you get a new life or whatever. We want to prioritize quality over quantity. And the reason is we want to avoid that potential for warping the incentives. So people are just like collecting the rewards because now we just want them, right? Like we're kind of in that scarcity hoarding mode all of a sudden. And we don't want that. That's not going to help us achieve a change in behavior or, consistency in somebody using our program. We want it to represent quality. So it's like something they truly achieved and now they're being rewarded for that. And it helps them move forward in that process or continue on in that process. If you want to do competitiveness, so things like leaderboards or, kind of tracking of who won something. So competitiveness is fine. It often lives in the world of games and gamification. We really want to be clear for your audience, like who they're competing against and why. So a lot of times in behavior change, what we're doing is asking people to compete against themselves. How can I be better at this than I was last time? How can I, drink my 8 glasses of water today because I only did 6 yesterday? So kind of improving upon what we've already done. If we start introducing competition with other groups, we should understand why they're doing that. What's the end game? Why do I need to worry about group B while I'm in group A? Is this friendly competition? Is it not friendly competition? Just be mindful of some of the potential negative sides that these things can introduce and make sure that we are preventing against those as much as possible. Well, with all that, Game over. You did it. You gamified it. You made it happen. You did more than just throwing some badges out there. Congratulations. And now for this episode, it is game over. I do hope you enjoyed this. Gamification was a real fun one for me to learn about and study about and hear even some of the tensions that are happening within the gamification world and what constitutes good game design and what doesn't. So please feel free to check out the book. It has just resources to some of the things that I looked at and learned from that I want to share with you and ways to go down the rabbit hole even more. You can get that at brooktully.com. Thanks. Bye.